there are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
Star Wars.
The film event of the year. The hype has been crazy. It's gone absolutely off the charts. I think even the people who are expecting a lot of hype weren't expecting this much hype. It's been absolutely mental.
It's been insane.
I haven't been able to walk down the street without people shouting Star Wars at me, singing snatches of the
Star
John
Wars.
Williams score. Every time you go out to buy milk, half the people in there are dressed as fucking stormtroopers. It's just been relentless. So we are going to review Star Wars now, spoiler free. There's going to be not a nary a hint of spoilers, except the absolute minimum level necessary to discuss a film at all. And then we're going to do a more spoilery section where we go deep into the woods, delve into the weeds, all that kind of thing.
Yes.
Complain in minute detail about every plot inconsistency. And that sort of thing. So stick around for that as well if you've seen the movie. And if you haven't seen it, come back later and listen to it, because I think you'll find it very, very interesting.
Yes, you will.
So we went to see this on Thursday night, the day it came out, like all the mega fans, like the mega fans we are. Went to see the Science Museum, the only cinema in Europe to be showing it in full 70mm on their giant screen with a lamp that burns hotter than the sun, apparently. It was the perfect conditions. It was sitting right in the middle. I had popcorn. It couldn't have been a better setting to watch this massive film event. So, Danny, what did you think?
Well, let's say we'll talk as much as the opening scroll and stuff you've seen in the trailer.
Yeah, that makes some sense, yeah.
The situation is, it's 30 years later, and of the ashes of the Empire, an identical organization called the First Order has risen up.
It's just the Empire again, but...
Luke's gone AWOL. No one knows where Luke is. And they're searching for a map that will have his location, the good guys, who are still the rebels. In the midst of this new setting, there are new characters. One of them is Oscar Isaacs playing Poe Dameron. He is a fighter pilot for the rebels. He's the best pilot in the galaxy.
Resistance, Danny.
The
We're not
Resistance.
called the rebels anymore.
We don't the rebels. We don't pay for things. He's searching for this map, and then there's Rey, played by newcomer Daisy Ridley. She's a scavenger on this Tatooine-esque planet called Jakku. And there's Finn, played by John Boyega, who is a stormtrooper who has a crisis of conscience early on. And,
he goes Rogue One.
He goes Rogue One, and yeah, it's basically a sort of, I think, not unfair to say, a bit of a kind of remakes / reboot of A New Hope.
Yeah.
With a lot of very familiar elements and an old cast of,
It's got the approach of this new film is very much what you'd expect if... Well, so George Lucas sold the rights to Star Wars to Disney, and they wanted to make more Star Wars movies, and they were obviously super duper aware of the reaction to the prequels, which is monumentally negative, even though they did make money. So they wanted to make new films which would not have the reaction the prequels did, which is sort of mass bafflement and disgust and senses of betrayal and like deep mourning and that kind of thing. And they hired J.J. Abrams to direct it, who is someone who has already had some success rebooting previous franchises and filling them with Fran references like it did with Star Trek, and giving them a lot of zip and making them look modern and be exciting, from beginning to end and that kind of thing. And so given their desire to not horrify the fans and the fact that they hired J.J. Abrams and the kind of previous approach that he's taken to his movies, the result is not that surprising. It's ultra cautious, the approach that they took to make this movie, in that they want to remind you of the greatness of the original Star Wars, particularly the first Star Wars movie, New Hope, as much as possible, while also telling a story that is sort of new. So
yes.
like with new characters and stuff like that. So there's just enough new stuff that you're not kind of just like, why does this film exist, or is it a complete remake? But everything is reassuringly familiar all the time. Like, it doesn't trouble you with anything that's too new. For all the people who have fond memories of watching Star Wars and want to see a film that is very, very Star Wars, then this film is for them, kind of thing. So I think within that framework, there is a limit to how good the film can be. When a film is essentially very dependent on the plot and characters and tone of a specific other film, it can only be so good because there's a lack of originality in its ambition. There's just a general kind of lack of ambition to it. But within that framework, I thought it was pretty good. It was about as good as a film that is sort of a remake, reboot of another film is going to be, I think. Yeah. It's a lot better than Jurassic World, which took a very, very similar approach to rebooting a beloved franchise property.
Yes, I agree completely. I think it's similar to Jurassic World in that it's somewhat slavishly retreads old Star Wars things, and you could just like spot the reference the whole movie. But rather than that film, which was very cynical, it's been made by someone who obviously loves the original. But the reason I'm slightly down on the movie, I think, because it sort of doesn't earn the nostalgia. It's just recreating it, and there's something a little cheap about it because all it needs to do is like play a bit of Star Wars music and have some lightsabers. There's such goodwill towards this film; people want to love it, and it like just about clears the bar, And so I found myself slightly resenting how slavish it was to the original because, as I was saying earlier, like A New Hope is so sort of open-hearted and sincere, and it's a real bit like movie magic. It's full of wonder, but this one is just repeating stuff which filled you with wonder 30 years ago. So there's something a little bit uninspired, and kind of it's the whole sequel thing of people want something the same but completely different.
Yeah. But a lot of the joy of the original movies is the sense of discovery, that something new is constantly unfolding.
Yeah.
And that's part of what makes Return of the Jedi the weakest installment in the three, is that they have another Death Star, and you saw that already in the first one. You have this world of infinite possibilities, and yet the big bad Death Rays returns, in a way that's a bit lazy. And this movie is a similar kind of thing. And I also found, one thing that I found kind of odd about it is that it... the original cast returns, so Harrison Ford and Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher are in it, and Chewbacca is in it, C-3PO is in it, and everything like that. So they have all these original trilogy faces and list familiarity. And they also have the new stuff, which is referencing the old stuff as well. So there's this kind of odd, slightly jarring thing where they had the adorable droid R2-D2 in the original trilogy. Now they have a new adorable droid called BB-8, but they still have R2-D2 as well. So it's like some kind of bizarre Hall of Mirrors thing. Where
it's just like
you have the reference and the original thing.
The first Star Wars movie, what's so brilliant about it is it just took all these like the hero's journey. It's very simple, all these archetypes, and it's like cowboys and World War II dogfights and samurais. It's like all the best elements of fantasy like crushed into one thing, and it created this completely new fantasy culture which isn't actually tied to anything in the world. It's not derived from a particular country. It's like everything. But with this movie, the only thing it's referencing is more Star Wars. So it's like it's not as bad, or this maybe is a poor comparison, but it's a bit like the Bond movies in that it's like laden by conventions.
Yeah.
So the only types of characters you can have in it, like you can only have bad people who've like betrayed their masters. That's the only arc of a villain in a Star Wars movie. Yeah. And it can't change from that.
It's weirdly limited, and it's odd how... also because the characters are constantly referencing... Like, the events of the original movies are, like, legendary, now 30 years later. So they specifically reference the events, and people say things like, hey, it's like that thing from, and they mention something that's in the previous one. They're like, yeah, it is like that.
I'm not sure how you'd overcome this, but it's like Star Wars is this big kind of singular event in film history, and, like, the rest of film culture is, like... I don't know, surrounded it, So it's hard to break free of that. So, like, all the sort of throwaway lines from A New Hope are now just, like, legendary lines. And so everyone in the movie is, like, it's this kind of meta element where all the new characters... It's like, but I saw you in that movie before. It's like that.
Yeah. They look at them like when Rey sees Harrison Ford, and she looks at him like, oh my God, it's Harrison Ford. It's just like a fan. And it's like the characters are trapped in some kind of odd cyclical history where... like the world can never move on. It's just the same events repeat themselves.
I thought the new cast, with the exception of Daisy Ridley, who I thought was a bit quite bland, I thought the new guys were fed in quite nicely. And they were doing a lot with the sort of another Star Wars thing of having very clear-cut characters
uncomplicated
defined
heroes.
by one, or two lines.
Yeah. I actually thought they were all really excellent. I can understand why you're a bit turned off by Daisy Ridley, who bears a strong resemblance to Keira Knightley and has a very Keira Knightley-esque grin.
She's also sort of the Luke character of the sort of just super earnest... It's hard to make that character work and for not to be...
Yeah, although she is... I think they've really kind of turned up to 11 the capable young heroine kind of thing. And She gets a lot to do. I think it's cool that they made the Luke character a woman now. The original trilogy is marked by almost zero presence from women. So except for Leia, obviously. Except for her,
She has
there's, like,
less and less to do.
yeah, exactly, and she is sort of
And that's
sidelined
true
as
of
it
this
goes
one as
on.
well.
No, it isn't. Oh, you mean
Leia,
Leia is?
yeah.
Oh, yeah, yeah. She remains quite sidelined, but
She's the same place she was in Empire Strikes Back. She's always just standing next to a control panel.
yeah.
That's all she does.
Yeah, so it's cool that they have a woman doing a lot more, and I thought she was perfectly fine. I mean, I didn't think she was amazing, as some reviewers have really loved Rey, but I thought she was doing, as quite a good job.
I don't know. I feel like it didn't really have to do much to like impress me, and it didn't. I don't know. It was just like it's so safe. It's so
Yeah, it doesn't take many risks. It takes very, very few risks.
and it feels it's like almost slightly. It's not cynical because it's like made by this guy who loves it, but it's like it's a weird like everyone has this like little personal connection to Star Wars. So if you feel like you're being, it's like a movie when it's like trying to manipulate you and you can feel it, and it's a bit irritating. It was a bit like that, It's like, don't trade on my good Star Wars memories. Don't just invoke my childhood and try and trick me into thinking this film's better than it is, JJ.
Yeah.
So I had a slightly sort of childish like, meh. Maybe a bit of Christmas Grinch sort of reaction to some of it.
It's absolutely desperate to evoke the magic of Star Wars.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like what you're saying, like it's a different job to the job being done by the original Star Wars, which is evoking the magic of space and all that, yeah. So it lacks that sense. But it's competent, it's fun, it looks good. Some of the new characters are quite good, and it sets things up in a way that makes you kind of hopeful for the new sequel. I could have kept watching it. I was like, this is fine, this is good fun. I think
Sure.
it's pretty good. I mean, I think it's better than most of the major movies that came out this year.
I don't know. I'm just a Christmas Grinch.
Okay, spoiler section now. If you've seen the movie, please stick around. If you haven't, come back in
8
minutes.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Watch out, spoilers ahoy. Careful, spoiler alert. Spoilers.
Okay.
What I wanted to say was, if it had been really fan servicey, you would have seen Luke and Han and Leia all on the Millennium Falcon, the old gang back together.
Yeah.
But the old gang is pretty much completely separate from each other. And only there's one scene where Han and Leia sort of cross paths, but she's for the most part relegated to just sort of standing. And the opening scroll says General Leia, and like, here we go, fucking General Leia. And then she's like,
Absolutely, yeah. I know I had exactly the same feeling where it's like, oh, she's not a princess anymore. They upgraded her to general, but she does nothing different. It's like she's the general of the resistance now, but all she talks about is family and love. It was a bit of a shame. And there is also something quite weird in seeing Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher kind of back in very similar looking kind of costumes and just doing the same stuff. And it almost makes, it emphasizes how old they've become.
And their plotline was always the most sort of adult thing about the franchise, like the most sort of psychologically real bit of it. It's all like, just space nonsense, but their relationship was like what anchored it, I thought.
Yeah.
In the, original trilogy.
Yeah, although some of their barbs and jive stuff are pretty lame, especially in Empire.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's true. And I think that their stuff is like relatively successful. I mean, it's very much anchored by the performances and the fact that you're just seeing them again together after so many years. But all right, so what did you think of how they handled the death of Han Solo?
It was a bit telegraphed, I thought.
Yeah.
You could see it coming a mile off.
I read some piece that had speculated that it might happen, so I think I was
I
prepared.
suspected that because I don't think Harrison was particularly invested in the. They just gave him all the cash in the world, and he's like,
Well, he wanted to be killed off in Return of the Jedi.
That's
right?
what I mean. What I think is a bit of housekeeping, because he didn't want to be in it. They should have killed him in Return of the Jedi. They should have had Luke walk off in the sunset at the end. That's what. Do you know this? Like Lawrence Kasdan had. There's a very good making of books of the Star Wars films, and they're all really interesting, especially the first one because of like George Lucas's batshit crazy ideas, which somehow worked into a genius film. But in the third film, Lawrence Kasdan, there's this like quite interesting bit about the back and forth about the scripts. And so originally it was going to be the planet of the Wookiees, not the Ewoks. And Lawrence Kasdan didn't want another Death Star. He wanted Han Solo to die, and so did Harrison Ford. And he wanted the ending to be Luke just walking off into the sunset of Tatooine because he's like completed his quest. There's nothing left for him to do.
Yeah.
And it was going to be like a Western ending. It's like,
That's
I'm leaving
cool,
the
yeah.
town. And so they've sort of done that in this movie.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
why
they've
done
because
that ending
Kasdan
now.
worked on it, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
he finally got to do what he wanted.
But I thought the manner of his death was good. And it provided an interesting character beat for Kylo Ren, rather than him like sacrificing himself or just getting shot.
Or like going down fighting, which I thought maybe that would be how he would go.
Yeah.
Heroic death, like fighting 10 people off or something.
So much of Star Wars are just stormtroopers missing people. It's like, it would be cheaper if he just got shot. It's like, you're fucking kidding me?
Absolutely, yeah. Being killed by the same method by which he evaded death like 100 times already, and they just finally get him in the 101.
Yeah.
I mean, we were discussing a bit afterwards whether Kylo Ren should have kept his mask on until the moment on the bridge, and then he removes his mask and you see him for the first time. But I was thinking that I quite like the fact that he takes his mask off in an earlier scene, because it's like the movie is telling you this is a major character, you're going to learn more about them, we're going to develop them properly halfway through, rather than only saving that moment for a major plot twist. But instead it happens earlier on in a sort of just a character moment, and it's like this guy's as much of a main character as Finn and Rey and the others and everything like that. And I think that by having all that stuff, it just really set up the best scene in the film for me, which was the lightsaber battle, which I think is just one of the... I don't know, I mean, probably have to watch it again to decide this, but I felt like it was one of the best moments in the Star Wars series to date altogether. I thought it was really well handled. It was an excellent balance of the kind of exciting action of the prequel ones, where they were all like flipping and flopping, and the really emotional weight of the fights in Empire Strikes Back and in Return of the Jedi. The setting was quite cool, like the way they sort of had stuff to slice down because they were surrounded by trees, and there was the hiss of the lightsaber going into the snow and everything like that. That was really good, and they did the work in the movie to make it good. It wasn't just that scene was good, but that they'd done all the work, to put it together. So that was quite cool. I think if I could change one thing about the film, it would be no Death Star. I think it's all right to repeat all this stuff from Star Wars, to an extent, but that has already been repeated one time. So now we have 3 of the 7 Star Wars films have a fucking Death Star in them. That's too high a ratio of Death Stars. And not only that, but this one, there's got to be... It's always an interesting discussion about what nonsense is too nonsense, if you know what I mean. How much sci-fi bullshit are you willing to put up with in these movies? And sometimes the mumbo-jumbo is like, whatever, that's the rules of the world, I don't care, it's fine. And sometimes it just stretches credulity a bit too much. So for some reason, I find that having a moon-sized base that can destroy a planet with a single laser, I'm like, okay, whatever. But having a planet-sized base that can destroy 6 planets with a single laser, and which sucks the sun into itself, I was just like, what is going on? And it makes you really suddenly... It's like, I don't think J.J. Abrams really thinks about that stuff. There's something that's very nerdish about really thinking about the details of how these worlds work, and he doesn't do that. And there's something of that in his other films. And in this one, there's this bit when they destroy the Republic and they fire that giant space laser. It splits into 6. They all go to different planets, and then all the heroes are standing on some other planet. They can see it happening in the sky. It's like, where are these things in relation to each other? I don't know. And that must have been the deaths of billions of people and an entire civilization. The Republic is destroyed in a moment, and none of the characters seem to know anyone from there, or they didn't. I don't know. It was a weirdly empty.
There's no cost. There's
no
cost.
Yeah, there's no sense of like that's not that big of a deal. And it was a bit odd. And the movie had a few things like that, which you just think about it later. You're like, really? Like, why? So that kind of irritated me. So I would change that. I would definitely... I feel like you did not need that. You definitely didn't need that. You can have dogfights. You can have TIE fighters, Just not a fucking Death Star.
That's fine, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was a bit... Yeah, I found all the lines that... The sort of Parsec reference...
Yeah, and I've got a bad feeling about this.
The trash compactor reference was all...
A bit too on the nose.
Yeah, exactly.
Some familiarity
and I find, like,
going a bit too far.
Those sort of things, they might have like a titter on the audience when they first see it, but it adds nothing to the film, and all it does is just remind you of another film. I don't understand like this obsession with like it's got a few nods to the originals. Like, who wants nods to the original?
Yeah,
it's not like
especially if they serve no purpose beyond that.
Yeah.
So I would describe it as fun, not amazing, but a fun, good film.
I describe it as okay, but a little bit disappointing for me. Too safe. Be bold, Disney. Be brave, be bold.
Yeah.
Yesterday I bumped into Imelda Staunton. She was out with her dog and we got talking. I asked her what she does when she isn't acting. She said she likes podcasts for relaxing. Remember when you're in the mood, what do you listen to?